You feel it before you understand it. That moment when the room tightens, when eyes linger too long, when a word lands sharp instead of soft, when someone tests you without saying your name. And in that instant, you do what you were trained to do. You explain, you soften, you defend. You think survival is about being understood, but that instinct is the first chain they ever put on you. Because the world is not watching what is said, it is watching who flinches. You've carried this longer than you admit, that urge to clear your name, that need to be seen as fair, good, reasonable. And every time you give in to it, something invisible happens. Your shape shrinks, your presence thins, your power leaks out through your mouth. This is the forbidden truth no one taught you. The moment you defend yourself, you hand the frame to someone else. And once the frame is gone, you don't get it back with words. You are not broken. You were never taught another way. You were taught to survive, not to dominate. You were taught morality, not perception. You were taught to speak, not to hold silence like a blade. This is where Machiavelli enters, not as history, not as quotes, but as a cold mirror. Because the man who survives accusations is not the one who proves innocence. It is the one who makes the accusation collapse under its own weight. You can feel the shift when you imagine it. Someone questions you, tests you, undermines you, and instead of reacting, you don't move. No defense, no explanation, no tightening in the chest, just stillness. That stillness does something dangerous to people. It forces them to hear themselves, and most cannot survive the sound of their own insecurity echoing back at them. This is the moment your life begins to make sense. Understand this now before you try to use it. Power is not truth. Power is perception held under pressure. Most people lose power not because they are wrong, but because they rush to correct. When someone accuses you, challenges you, questions your intent, they are not seeking clarity. They are seeking control of the narrative. And the second you respond emotionally, you accept their premise. You step onto their ground. You play by their rules. You say, "That's not what I meant." What they hear is, "You have the authority to judge me." You say, "You misunderstood." What the room hears is, "He needs approval." You say, "Let me explain." An explanation, no matter how logical, always sounds like guilt to an audience that didn't ask. This is the trap. You don't want clarity. You want control. Clarity is for therapy. Control is for power. And Machiavelli understood something brutal long before psychology gave it names. People don't fear what they understand. They fear what they cannot predict. This is why the strongest figures you've ever encountered were not loud. They were quiet in a way that unsettled you. They spoke slowly. They didn't rush to be liked. They let tension sit in the room like a loaded weapon. You noticed it, didn't you? When they were attacked, the air shifted. Not because of what they said, but because they didn't scramble. Silence, when delivered with presence, does not signal weakness. It signals certainty. And certainty terrifies people who live off emotional leverage. You survive things you still don't have words for. That's why this resonates. Because somewhere along the way you learned that explaining kept you safe. That smoothing things over reduced damage. That compliance was survival. But power is a different ecosystem. In power dynamics, the one who speaks first is often the one who bleeds. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Here is the first shift. It's subtle, almost invisible. You stop answering questions that weren't asked in good faith. Someone calls you cold. You don't deny it. Someone says you've changed. You let the sentence die where it lands. Someone tries to bait you into explaining your motives. You don't reach for language. You reach for time. And something strange happens. They start talking more. They repeat themselves, clarify, justify. They begin doing the very thing you refuse to do. This is not accidental. This is how human psychology collapses under silence. And when you don't react, the mind fills the gap. And the mind almost always fills it with self-doubt. They begin asking themselves questions they never intended to face. Did I go too far? Why isn't this working? Why don't I feel in control anymore? And the room feels it. Because people aren't evaluating the accusation anymore. They're evaluating who looks composed. You're allowed to want more. More respect, more authority, more control over how you are perceived. And the first step is realizing this. Your reactions have been doing their work for you. Every time you rushed to defend, you taught people exactly how to handle you. Press here, accuse there, watch him fold. Now imagine the reversal. You don't react. You let the moment stretch just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. And in that space, something ancient wakes up, an instinct older than a language. People defer to the calm one, not because he is right, but because he is unmoved. This is where the hidden threat reveals itself. Because the moment you stop defending yourself, people notice. Some feel respect, some feel curiosity. But a few, pay attention to these, feel exposed. These are the ones who relied on your predictability, on your explanations, on your need to be seen as good. When that disappears, they panic, they escalate, they provoke harder, they try to force a reaction because your silence has turned the spotlight back onto them. And here's the danger no one warns you about. When you remove emotional access, some people will try to punish you for it. They will label you, call you arrogant, cold, manipulative. This is not coincidence. This is projection, because only someone who feels loss of control reaches for character assassination. And this is where most people fold, right here. They rush to prove they were not that person. They rush to soften their image. They rush back into explanation. But you don't. You let the labels sit, because labels only stick when you chase them. And when you don't chase them, something flips. The accusation begins to look emotional, obsessive, unstable. The room starts asking a different question. Why is this bothering them so much? You didn't say a word, but the frame shifted. This is predator-prey reversal in real time. You are no longer reacting. You are being reacted to. And here's the line you cross without announcing it. You stop living in defense. You start living in definition, not explaining who you are, not correcting perceptions, but letting your stillness define the perimeter. From here on, every step matters, because once people realize they can't move you emotionally, they must either respect you or remove themselves. And not everyone survives that choice. There's a moment, quiet, dangerous, when you realize this isn't just about silence. It's about who carries the weight. Because when you stop defending yourself, the weight doesn't disappear. It transfers. The accusation doesn't vanish. It lands somewhere else, on them. This is the core revelation most people never reach. Power is not the absence of attack. Power is deciding who must carry the tension. You've been carrying it your whole life. Every raised eyebrow, every sideways comment, every "I didn't mean it like that." Every time you tried to smooth the air so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You were doing the emotional labor for everyone else. In the moment you stop, the imbalance exposes itself. They fidget, they overtalk, they repeat the accusation with more emotion, hoping volume will replace authority. You don't interrupt, you don't clarify, you don't rescue them from their own discomfort. You let them feel it. And here's the part that changes everything. People believe the one who can tolerate silence is the one with leverage. Because silence says, I'm not afraid of how this looks. If this is landing in your chest right now, pause. Notice why. Where in your life do you still rush to explain? Where do you still try to be understood by people who never offered you respect? You're not imagining this. This pattern has been draining you slowly. And if you feel the urge to argue with what you're hearing, sit with that too. That reflex is the old training trying to pull you back. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to agree. Just notice where this hits. And if it does, say something about it below. Not to prove anything, just to mark the moment you saw it. Because once seen, it cannot be unseen. Small moments begin to shift first. A pause before you respond. A sentence left unfinished. A message you don't send. You walk away from a conversation without tying it up neatly. And the world doesn't collapse. Instead, something unsettling happens. People start adjusting around you. Their tone changes. Their jokes soften. Their words become measured. Not because you threaten them, but because you stopped absorbing their emotional mess. You feel it in your body first, a strange calm, almost guilt. You wonder if you're being cruel, cold, unfair. That's the old conditioning talking. You were taught that strength must always explain itself. That if someone feels uncomfortable, It's your job to fix it. But power doesn't soothe. Power stabilizes. You begin to notice who benefits from your old behavior. The ones who took shots as jokes. The ones who thrived on your reactions. The ones who poked and poked, then hid behind innocence. When you remove access, these people don't grow quiet. They grow loud. That's how you know. Because respectful people don't need your emotional compliance to stay respectful. It's okay to feel this, the unease, the withdrawal symptoms. You're not becoming someone else. You're shedding something that never belonged to you. You walk into the room, the same one where you used to shrink just a little, where you monitored your tone, where you softened your words before anyone asked. You feel the floor under your feet this time. Someone makes a comment, sharp enough to be noticed, vague enough to deny. You don't respond. You don't smile. You don't harden. You don't perform. You simply look at them. Not aggressively, not challengingly, just present. The room shifts. You feel it like pressure in the ears. They laugh too quickly. Someone else clears their throat. The conversation stumbles. You didn't win anything. You didn't say anything. But everyone felt who held center gravity. Later, someone approaches you differently, more careful, more respectful. Not because you demanded it, but because your silence rewrote the rules. You notice how much energy you used to spend preparing defenses that never mattered. And you realize something unsettling. Most of your exhaustion wasn't from conflict. It was from anticipation, from bracing, from rehearsing explanations no one deserved. Now there is space, and in that space you stand taller without trying. But this is not the end. This is where it gets dangerous, because silence alone is not power. Silence without awareness becomes avoidance. You must know when to be silent and when to cut. Some situations require a response, but not the kind you're used to. Not defense, not justification. Precision. A sentence that closes the door instead of opening debate. That's your interpretation. Interesting perspective. We're not discussing this. Short, flat, final, no explanation attached. These phrases aren't passive. They are boundaries made of steel. And here's the unresolved truth you must sit with. Not everyone will stay in your life when you stop explaining yourself. Some relationships survive only on your willingness to shrink. When you remove that, they reveal their true shape. This is not loss, it's filtration. Awareness becomes a weapon here, but only if you hold it calmly. Because every predator watches for the moment you doubt yourself. And there is one still watching, someone who will test you again. Harder. Not yet, but soon. And when they do, the move will not be silence. It will be something colder, something final. You're closer than you think. Something changes now. Not outside, inside. You stop waiting for the test. Before, you braced for it. You sensed it coming and prepared explanations in advance. Like armor you wore every day without noticing the weight. Now the armor is gone. And that's when the rhythm breaks. The silence you once used becomes something else. It becomes expectation. People hesitate before speaking to you. They check themselves mid-sentence. They recalibrate. You feel it in the pauses, the half-finished thoughts, the way conversations reroute when you're present. This is not because you became aggressive. It's because you became unavailable for nonsense. And unpredictability begins to orbit you. Not chaos, control without signals. You don't always stay silent anymore. But when you speak, it's never where they expect. You might ignore 10 small provocations and respond to one minor detail with surgical clarity. That inconsistency is not emotional. It's strategic. Because the human mind fears one thing above all, patterns that stop working. They no longer know which version of you they're dealing with. The explainer? Gone. The peacemaker? Retired. The predictable target? Dead. And somewhere in the background, something old and primitive wakes up in them. Caution. Here's the invisible move no one sees when it happens. You stop performing strength. You start setting terms. Not out loud, not publicly, internally. You decide who gets access to your energy and who doesn't. Some people still get warmth. Some get distance. Some get nothing at all. And you don't announce the change. You let them discover it the hard way, When someone tries to pull you back into old dynamics, old guilt, old emotional leverage, old assumptions, you don't argue. You simply don't respond the way they need. And that breaks the spell. Because power is not about dominating others. It's about refusing to be dominated by their expectations. You're not imagining this. When you stopped explaining, you became heavier in the room. Your words land differently now, because there are fewer of them. People start remembering what you say, not because it's louder, but because it's rare. And quietly, invisibly, something happens. Others begin defending you when you're not there, correcting narratives you never touched, checking disrespect before it reaches you. You never asked for it. That's the point. When you no longer plead your case, the world fills the vacuum. For you, that's when you know you crossed the line. Every predator has a predator. And the final lesson is not silence, it's restraint. You could destroy certain people with words now. You can see their weak points, their insecurities, their dependence on reaction. But you don't. Because the most dangerous position is not the one who attacks. It's the one who could and doesn't need to. You let some people drift into irrelevance. Others self-destruct, trying to provoke you. A few learn quickly and adapt. You don't chase outcomes anymore. You define gravity. And here is the line you carry with you. Not spoken, but lived. The one who does not defend himself is not defenseless. He is unreachable.